Hey everyone, how's it going? Forrest here, again with another installment of my complete analysis of all of J.S. Bach's chorale harmonizations. Today we are looking at Wo Gott der Herr nicht bei uns hält, which translates to if the Lord God does not stay with us. Thankfully, this is a shorter chorale. I've had some pretty large chorales proportionately or disproportionately over the last couple of days, and it kind of hit me really hard. I had to spend more time formatting them, and it after a long day it knocks me out. So having a shorter chorale like this is definitely one to look forward to time investment wise. Apologies for the typo in the title. I didn't want to waste paper and reprint another copy, but this is a relatively short chorale. We're going to breeze right through this. So we have no key signature. We start with A minor. We end on A major. In kind of a deceptive fashion, I think actually we are starting in the key of C major, and this A minor is actually a 6 chord, but there's no doubt in my mind that the overall tonality of this chorale is A minor. It just so happens to start on C. You could analyze the beginning of the chorale in A minor if you so choose, but I think C is a much better fit. We then have E, E, G, and C. That's C major in first inversion, which is our tonic. Passing tones in the melody and the tenor before we get F, C, F, and A. That's F major, which is our 4 chord. Passing tones in the tenor and the melody again before we get E, E, G, and C. And actually, something I'm just noticing right now, in between our 4 chord and our tonic triad, we have F, D, F, and B. That's like a passing 7, 6, 4 chord, and 4 going to 7 is a normative progression, so I see this as a subdivision of the harmonic rhythm going on here. Okay, next we have some passing tones going on here, or just some non-chord tones in general. There are passing tones in the outer voices, but this B is a non-chord tone, but it's a 7th. It's kind of like the opposite of an escape tone where you leap into it and then step out of it. I think that's one definition of an appoggiatura. I might be wrong, but this is also another sort of subdivision of the harmonic rhythm. In my eyes, we have D, B, G, and D, which is G major over D. That would be a 5, 6, 4 chord. Interesting that we're seeing 2 second inversion triads occurring here on the subdivided beats of the harmonic rhythm here. I think that's coincidental, but maybe there's some intention to it, who knows. But on the other side of this 5, 6 chord, we have C, C, G, and E, which is our tonic triad, C major in root position. Oh, I tried to sweep away that H as if it were an eraser crumb, but no, that just was it was just off in my periphery, so it looked like a marking on the page, which I guess in all fairness it is. We then have F, C, A, and D. That's a D minor 7 over F, which is 2, 6, 5. We know that Bach loves 2, 6, 5 chords. G, B, G, and D, which is our 5 chord, G major in root position. And then we have C, E, G, and C, which is our tonic triad, C major in root position, making this a perfect authentic cadence in the key of C. Looking ahead, we have a perfect authentic cadence in the key of A minor, and I think there's no real reason why we can't just say we modulate straight away, because we do get this G sharp here happening afterwards, and it feels like the modulation's happening before the chromaticism here. So we're going to call this A minor chord 6 in the key of C major, just like how we started this phrase on an A minor chord. This time it's actually functioning like our tonic A, E, A, and C. We then have E, E, G sharp, and B. That's E major in root position, which is our 5 chord, our dominant, with a passing 7th in the tenor. We then have F, C, A, and A. That's F major over, that's just F major in root position again. Don't know why I'm so compelled to call it an inverted triad when it isn't. This is a deceptive progression as well, because 5 going to 6. It's not typically where we expect a 5 chord to go. Actually, as commonly as we do see 5 go to 6, it's a deceptive progression because only because we expect 5 to go to 1, but 5 goes to 6 a great deal of the time. It might even be more fitting to call it a deceptive progression if it goes to something like 2 or like 3. But yeah, the textbook deceptive progression is 5 going to 6. It does have that inquisitive feeling to it just by listening. We have some passing tones in the tenor and the melody before we get F, A, and C. That's another F major chord, so we don't need to mark it. We then have E, F, A, and D. some weird D minor chord if we look at that E as part of the chord, but it's this D that's our chord tone, making this a D minor chord in root position. That's our 4 chord. We then have E, E, A, and B, which is E major with a 4-3 suspension in the alto. We know that 5 is being implied. This G sharp is the resolution of this suspension here. We have a delayed passing 7th here in the tenor before we cadence on A minor, A, C, E, and A, which is our tonic triad in root position. Okay, looking ahead, we have a half cadence in the key of A minor, but I'm pretty convinced that we go to C major here in the beginning. It really sounds like a 5-1 progression here, and similarly to how we transitioned from C major to A minor through the 6th chord, I think we're doing the same thing here. This A minor chord is functioning like our 6 going into the next key. That's how I hear it. Of course, you could also analyze this as a direct modulation if you wanted to, just saying we go directly to C, but I think both of these analyses are accurate. We have G, B, G, and D, which is G major, that is our dominant, and that goes to C major, C, C, G, and E, which is our tonic triad in root position. A passing tone in the bass before we get E, G, G, and E, which is E minor in root position. 1 going to 3. You could kind of look at this as like a 1/6 chord without the root as well, depending on how you look at the chords. E minor really is a substitute for C major, especially in this ascending configuration. We see Bach take a chord progression or slow down the harmonic rhythm and spend less of the time progressing between chords by rotating them over a number of beats. Sometimes he goes as far as spending 3 beats inverting a whole chord 2 times, like root, first, and second inversion over 3 beats. It's relatively uncommon, but we have seen it before. We have some passing tones in the lower voices before we get G, B, D, and B, which is our 5 chord. We have a thirds progression here, which is interesting. We have some passing tones in the upper voices as well, which are kind of implying C major. We have the E and we have the C going on, which does sort of smooth out this transition here. I think that we have a bout of secondary dominance that turns into a modulation on the other end. Of course, you could say that we've modulated to the key of A minor by this point as well, similar to how we did it here rather than doing it after the G sharp here, but to me it still sounds like we're in the key of C until we get to the other side, especially with the melody going on and really outlining C major. So this G sharp, B, F, and D chord, that's G sharp fully diminished 7th in root position. That's going to be a 7 chord of 6 because G sharp is the leading tone to A minor, and that is our submediant or our 6, and that's where we go. A, B, E, and C. Very interesting here. We have this 9/8 suspension over the bass, or I guess it's really a 2/1 suspension, and the bass leaps down to turn it into a 6th over the bass. That's a very beautiful gesture by Bach, but we know still a tonic triad's being implied here, or rather a 6 chord is being implied here that then turns into a tonic triad. Again, Bach using, or at least the way that I'm analyzing, switching between 6 and 1 and 1 and 6 and 6 and 1 again. Of course, like I said, you could say that we've modulated to the key of A minor at any of these points. I feel like there's a zone going on here where it's not exactly clear, but this is where I decided for the modulation to occur, just because the melody sort of seems to be agreeing with the idea of C major right now. And it isn't really until we cadence on B that or up until the cadence on this B right here where it starts to feel like supporting A minor rather than being a leading tone to C major. But looking ahead, we have C, A, E, and C. This completes this suspension while also changing the bass. Still an A minor chord over C this time. Passing tone in the bass before we get E, G sharp, E, and B, which is our dominant in the key of A minor, which is E major. Okay, looking ahead, we have a perfect authentic cadence in not the most likely place, but still a relatively expectable destination. We have a perfect authentic cadence in the key of G major, but we stay in A minor for a bit until we get to G major. We have A, E, and C, which is our tonic triad, A minor, which is where we would expect this 5 to go, passing 7th in the bass, F, A, D, and D. That's D minor in first inversion, 4-6. Passing tones in the bass and the alto, before we get D, D, F, and A, which is taking our D minor triad and putting it in root position. It's kind of interesting here because if we take a look at this progression right here, it kind of feels like a 2-7-1 progression, or maybe this B right here sort of feels like 7 of 3 because we have E, G, G, and C on the other side of this, which is C major in first inversion, 3-6. And I think this is also where we modulate to the key of G major. It is now our 4-6 chord. So we're seeing a new set of chords that are being used to move from key to key, 3 and 4. And we also have some passing tones going on in the lower voices, which spells F sharp, A, E, and C, which is F sharp minor 7 flat 5 in root position. That's 7 half diminished. 4 going to 7 is always a good sign, and one of the more common subdivisions of the harmonic rhythm. We saw it earlier as well, 4 going to 7, pretty much right at the beginning of the chorale. We then have G, B, D, and B, which is our tonic triad in root position. This D is also a chord tone, so we don't need to mark it. We then have C, C, E, and A. That's A minor in first inversion. That's 2-6. Bach loves 2-6 chords in cadential situations. We have a passing tone going on as well in the tenor before we get D, A, F sharp, and A, which is our 5 chord, our dominant D major. And then we have G major, G, B, D, and G, which is our tonic triad. Okay, looking ahead to the end of the chorale, we have, as we would expect, a perfect authentic cadence in the tonic key, A minor, but we stay in G major for a while. It really isn't until we see this ascending melodic minor here that we're starting to think in terms of A minor. So we have E, G, E, and C. That's C major in first inversion, 4-6, and we have some passing tones going on as well. We have F sharp, A, E, and C. We've seen this before. This is F sharp half diminished in root position, a very common subdivision of the harmonic rhythm that Bach employs, and that goes to our tonic triad, G, B, D, and B, which is G major. And we also have some passing tones going on, which is really interesting. We have C sharp, which is a chromatic tone, C sharp, E, G, and B. That is C sharp minor 7 flat 5 over G, or 7-4-3 of 5, because C sharp is the leading tone to D, and D is our 5 chord, and that's the chord that we get on the other side of this. We have D, F sharp, and A, which is D major over F sharp. That's 5-6. And very interestingly, this coincides or allides with the ascending melodic minor fragment here in the key of A minor, so I'm convinced that this is where we modulate, and this is now our major 4-6 chord, and this is a tool that Bach has used to modulate to minor keys from adjacent keys like G major very commonly, not frequently, but very commonly in the past. We also have some passing tones. We typically see 4 paired with 7, but in these ascending melodic minor sections, we typically get a 5 chord, which is what we get here. G sharp, D, E, and B, which is E7 over G sharp. That's 5-6-5. 4-6, 5-6-5 as a subdivided progression is pretty common in these melodic minor sections, whether or not there is a modulation occurring. And then we get A minor, of course, A, C, E, and C, which is our tonic triad. Passing 7th in the bass, we have this very textbook authors would be very happy to see this in the wild, where melodic minor is typically defined as this ascending raised 6th and 7th scale degrees and descending natural 7th and 6th scale degrees. Here it is occurring in the wild, and to their credit, that's usually how it happens, but not always. So it is a relatively stable definition, but it's not by any means purely codified. It's not the only time it happens. We also have a passing tone in the tenor here before we go to F sharp, A, and D. That's D minor in first inversion again, 4-6. Then we have some passing tones going on here as well. We have E, A, G, and C. It's kind of like a passing A minor 7 chord again. Wouldn't really make sense to see a tonic minor 7 chord, but the fact that it's passing I feel is more incidental than anything else. But then we go to D, A, F, and B. B. That's B minor 7 flat 5 over D, which is 2-6-5. We know that Bach loves 2-6-5 chords. We then go to E, A, E, and B. This is not the first time that we've seen a 4-3 suspension in an A minor cadence. We saw it at the end of the A section, maybe hinting at the relationship between the first, or the second phrase, I guess, in the A section and the ending of the B section. But still, this is implying a 5 chord, or I guess more specifically a 5-7 chord, because at the same time we get the resolution, it's G sharp here, we get D, which is our chordal 7th as well. So 5 or 5-7, I feel like they're both accurate descriptors of what's going on here. I'm going to stick with 5-7. And then we cadence on A, E, C sharp, and A, which is our tonic triad in major. And just like in the majority of Bach's minor chorales, he ends with that Picardy third, and I imagine he does so to end on a more uplifted note after a very dreary minor setting beforehand. And that is the analysis for today. Fairly straightforward chorale. Again, there's this sort of idea here where there's a modulation happening after a secondary dominant. I feel like, modulation zones, wherever you hear the modulation to occur, what's more important is that you identify that the modulation has occurred by a point and can be analyzed previous to that by a certain number of beats, and that sort of defines the zone. I go back and I've gone back and looked at some of my older analyses, and I think that's something that I need to clarify more. Maybe I'll go back and make some clarification videos and reanalyze some of the older chorales I've looked at for clarification's sake, and also now that I have a lot more experience with the chorales, it is probably better in terms of consistency to stick with the analysis that I've been working on and building up until this point, to then go back and reanalyze until I get to the point where I started hitting my stride and being consistent. But that's just that's speculative, and that's something to worry about in the future. Definitely not something to worry about now so much, because I have hundreds of chorales to analyze. And if you're interested in being a part of that journey, if you want to get notified about my daily upload, you can hit the notification icon. You could also subscribe to the channel. It would mean a lot to me, and I would love to have you along for the adventure. But on that note, thank you so much for watching the video. If you've made it this far, I really appreciate it. You've supported the channel by doing so, and it means the world to me that you have. And anyways, I look forward to tomorrow's analysis, and I hope you take care.